Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. Go ahead and like, share with your friends and subscribe. I trudged through the glass-paneled lobby of Meridian Enterprises, my heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The usual hum of the city outside barely registered as I reached for the door to my car. That's when I heard it shouted, "Raw, urgent, don't get in that car." I spun around. And there he was, a man I'd passed countless times without thinking twice, small frame, uniform slightly dusted with grime, face lined with worry. His eyes, wide and desperate, locked on me. I don't have time to explain, he stammered. Just trust me. Not safe. What do you mean? Not safe how? I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm, even though a shiver crawled down my spine. My daughter, she's sick, he said abruptly, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. Neuro something syndrome. NDS. It's rare. And I found papers. Shredded papers about the Langley project. Something's wrong. Kellen, his voice faltered. Your brother. My pulse stuttered. Kellen, my younger brother, had always been daring in ways I couldn't control. Dangerous ventures, secretive research, and lately, whispers of a project tied to neurological treatments. I had brushed them off until now. I don't understand, I said, taking a cautious step closer. What's he got to do with this? Liam or Lucas, as I later learned his name, ran a hand through his tight-cropped hair, visibly torn between panic and relief that I'd stopped. I saw things, documents hidden, data altered. They were planning something not right. If Kellen goes near the lab today, it could, his words choked off as he glanced toward the street. I have to go? I can't explain fully, but I swear, it's real. Before I could react, he darted toward the end of the driveway, disappearing as a shadowed figure stepped from the side of my car. The beep of a security alarm went off, and suddenly my driverless schedule felt insignificant against the sharp pulse of immediate danger. I called security immediately, my fingers trembling as I relayed what happened. Within minutes, a bomb squad had swarmed the perimeter. Barricades went up. Employees and visitors were evacuated. Cameras caught every moment, broadcasting my shocked face to the monitoring room and, likely, to someone's phone in the city. I felt trapped, exposed in a way that went beyond the physical barricades. As I waited, anxiety knotted my stomach. The usual thrill of being CEO, the power, the control vanished, replaced by a gnawing fear I couldn't shake. And yet, the flash of honesty in Lucas's eyes held me there. He hadn't yelled to delay me for attention. There was fear, raw and unmistakable. Later, when police and federal agents had thoroughly examined my vehicle and found nothing, Lucas was taken aside. I followed, insisting I needed to speak with him. The officers were skeptical, their suspicion thinly veiled. Miss Langley, you've been thoroughly checked. This man has caused quite a scene for no reason. I ignored the reprimand, locking eyes with Lucas. Look, I know this seems crazy, I said gently, but I saw the fear in your eyes. You wouldn't risk yourself if there wasn't something real. Tell me what's going on. He exhaled sharply, as if finally giving in to the weight he'd been carrying alone. My daughter, Maya, she's very ill. Neurosaptic decay syndrome. Rare. Fatal if untreated. And in your brother's lab. I found shredded reports, altered results. They're not looking to cure anything. They're trying to expedite financial gains, maybe worse. I don't know all the details, but they planned something that would harm him. The words hit me like ice water. Harm Kellen? The thought was absurd and terrifying all at once. I had to confirm this before panic spiraled further. I pulled him aside to a quieter room, the background chatter of security fading. I need names, dates, anything that can point me to what's really happening. Lucas hesitated, glancing toward the corridor, then leaned closer. Dr. Farron Finch, head researcher. He's hiding evidence. He manipulated trials. It's not just unethical, it's dangerous. Kellen, he doesn't know. But if he finds out later, it'll be too late. The clarity of his fear was infectious. I realized then that this was no random act. This was a man cornered by circumstance, desperate, and yet unwilling to compromise his daughter's well-being. I felt a pang of admiration, mixed with guilt for not noticing the warning signs earlier. Then we act fast, I said finally, resolutely. We check the lab, we verify the data, and we stop this before it goes any further. He nodded, relief mingling with terror. I don't know if I'll get a second chance to protect him. As we moved toward the lab, my mind raced. The polished corridors I'd walked countless times now felt ominous. The hum of machinery and the faint smell of antiseptic made every corner a potential threat. And yet, there was purpose now, a shared mission between an unlikely pair, a CEO and a janitor, bound by fear, courage, and the love of a child neither could ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I'd taken for granted about my company, the schedules, the profits, the media appearances was secondary. What mattered now was protecting someone I loved, trusting someone I barely knew, and facing the dangerous underbelly of the world I thought I controlled. Lucas's hand brushed mine briefly as we navigated the labyrinth of corridors. I've never asked for help like this before, he admitted, his voice low. But you might be the only one who can stop what's coming. And in that moment, I understood that life didn't always unfold according to plan. Sometimes it demanded instinct, trust, and action that defied logic. And sometimes, it demanded we listen to the voice screaming in the hallway, the one we might have ignored if not for the weight of the truth. I felt the chill of imminent danger wrap around me, but also a fierce determination I hadn't realized was there. Together, we would uncover what was hidden, confront the shadows, and protect Kellen. But above all, we would fight for Maya, the innocent life at the center of a storm she didn't understand. I didn't know if we'd succeed. I only knew we couldn't afford not to try. The lab smelled of antiseptic and metal, the sterile air doing little to calm the knot of anxiety coiling in my stomach. Lucas led the way, his steps cautious, alert. I followed, heels muffled against the cold tiles, heart hammering like a warning drum. Every corridor, every blinking light, felt like a countdown. Somewhere inside, Dr. Farron Finch was moving with purpose, and we were intruding into the eye of a storm we had barely begun to understand. Here, Lucas whispered, motioning to a door slightly ajar. Papers were scattered on the floor, shredded remnants spilling from a locked cabinet. He crouched, picking up fragments and attempting to piece together meaning from the chaos. "It's worse than I thought," he murmured. "They were falsifying trials. The Langley project wasn't designed to save anyone. It was a cover for experiments that could harm patients, even Kellen." My stomach turned. I had always prided myself on running a company with integrity, but now the reality of deception within my own walls hit me like a physical blow. I knelt beside him, scanning the fragments, recognizing partial spreadsheets, manipulated test results, and coded notes. "Who benefits from this?" I asked. "Why risk lives?" Lucas shook his head, eyes wide. "Money. Control. Eliminate obstacles." His voice cracked with emotion. "Kellen, he's a threat to their plans. They want to accelerate their liquidation. If he gets in the way, he's expendable." The idea of my brother in danger, a pawn in someone else's pursuit of power, ignited a fury I hadn't felt in years. I grabbed my phone, discreetly taking photos of the papers, documenting everything. Lucas worked silently beside me, hands trembling but precise. In that moment, the world outside the lobby, the city, the security protocols disappeared. There was only the immediate, pressing need to expose the truth. A sudden noise and a metallic clang made us both freeze. I motioned for silence, signaling Lucas to step back into the shadows. A figure emerged, Graves, the head of security, his expression unreadable but alert. "Miss Langley," he said quietly, scanning the room. "I thought you were at the perimeter. What's going on?" I motioned to Lucas, explaining briefly but urgently. Graves' eyes narrowed, recognition and disbelief mingling. "If what you're saying is true, we need to move fast. Finch won't hesitate to protect himself and his assets, and Kellen is the target." Together, we moved deeper into the lab, navigating corridors filled with humming machines and temperature-controlled chambers. Every corner held the potential for confrontation. Lucas whispered, "Dr. Finch has cameras. We have to be careful. He knows someone's watching the project closely." Graves nodded, pulling a small device from his belt that temporarily disabled cameras along our path. I followed, heart racing, mind cataloging every detail. It was a delicate dance of stealth and urgency. We couldn't afford mistakes. A single misstep could trigger a chain reaction with consequences none of us could predict. We found the central lab chamber eventually, the door secured with a keycard I didn't have. Graves bypassed the lock with practiced efficiency, and we entered. The sight inside was almost surreal. Kellen was strapped into a chair, monitors attached, and Finch hovered nearby, adjusting controls with a calm, chilling precision. "Kellen!" I shouted, sprinting toward him. Finch froze, a flicker of panic crossing his face. Lucas stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "Step away from him," he demanded. Finch smirked, voice cold. "Ah, the little janitor thinks he can save the rich brat. How touching." Graves moved swiftly, intervening, but Finch was dangerous. The room became chaotic, wires snapped, alarms tripped, monitors flickered. I grabbed Kellen's arm, freeing him from the chair, while Lucas and Graves neutralized Finch as best they could. Once Kellen was out, I looked around at the aftermath, the shredded papers, overturned equipment, and the exhausted expressions of my team. This was insane," Kellen whispered, still weak but alive. "I didn't realize they planned to." "Save your breath," I said, pulling him close. "You're safe now. We're not letting them harm you, or anyone else." Lucas exhaled, shoulders sagging. "I thought I'd never see him get out," he admitted. "I thought this was the end." Graves, bloodied but resolute, shook his head. "It's not over. Finch's allies. There's more corruption to root out. But you three, you've done what no one else could." We escorted Kellen to a secure area, away from the cameras, away from the danger. I sat beside him, holding his hand, while Lucas kept watch. The gravity of what had just transpired settled heavily on us. This wasn't just a corporate misstep. It was a deliberate, malicious attempt to manipulate and harm. And we had stopped it, but only barely. The evidence we collected became our shield. Spreadsheets, shredded documents reconstructed, and testimonies from Lucas and Graves formed a clear picture. Finch's plan was exposed, and with federal authorities alerted, the wheels of justice began turning. I coordinated with legal teams, ensuring the investigation would be airtight. The weight of responsibility pressed down on me. I had to protect my brother, my company, and the innocent patients at risk. Over the following days, Lucas and I worked tirelessly, combing through data, cross-referencing documents, and uncovering the full extent of the Langley Project's falsifications. The deeper we delved, the clearer the malicious intent became. Trials had been manipulated to appear safe, patients had been misrepresented in reports, financial gains were prioritized over lives. It was worse than we feared. Yet, amid the chaos, a bond formed between Lucas and me. He was no longer just a janitor shouting warnings. He was a man with knowledge, insight, and courage born of necessity. And I, CEO Ava, had no choice but to trust him, to rely on instincts and human connection over protocols and schedules. Together, we confronted Finch in a controlled scenario arranged with authorities. The confrontation was tense, legal, but charged with emotion. Lucas's first-hand account, combined with our documented evidence, left Finch with no room for denial. He was arrested, and the immediate threat to Kellen neutralized. As I watched the authorities lead Finch away, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. We had won a critical battle, but the war for ethical governance, transparency, and the safety of patients like Maya had only just begun. I glanced at Lucas, his expression tired but proud. He had risked everything for his daughter, for truth, and now he stood beside me as an unexpected ally. In that sterile lab, amidst the broken monitors and strewn papers, a new sense of purpose took root. The danger had passed, but the responsibility remained. We had exposed the system's corruption, but our work wasn't done. The Langley Project had been stopped in its tracks, yet we knew that vigilance would be required to prevent further misuse of power, wealth, and science. Lucas placed a hand on Kellen's shoulder. "He's lucky you didn't ignore the warning," he said softly. "Many wouldn't have listened." I looked at my brother, then at Lucas. We didn't just stop Finch. We started something bigger. Transparency, accountability, ethical oversight. That's our next step. And in that quiet, heavy moment, I realized that the real battle wasn't just saving one life. It was building a system that valued life over greed, honesty over deception, and courage over fear. It was a lesson we had learned the hard way, but one we were determined to uphold. The aftermath of the investigation was a whirlwind, a blur of meetings, legal consultations, and media attention. I watched Lucas sit beside me in the conference room, hands clasped tightly, eyes darting nervously at the phone that never stopped ringing. For him, this was a personal fight for his daughter, his family, and his dignity. For me, it was both personal and professional. The company I had built on principles of innovation and trust now had to bear the weight of exposure and reform. We started by confronting the board with undeniable evidence. Every falsified report, every manipulated trial result, every shredded document painstakingly reconstructed by Lucas was laid out on the polished oak table. The executives were silent at first, eyes flicking nervously to each other. Then came questions, defensive statements, and attempts to shift blame. I held my ground. This isn't about finger-pointing, I said firmly, voice steady. It's about correcting what's wrong and protecting lives. Lucas spoke next, recounting his discovery and the danger Kellen faced. His words, raw and unpolished, carried a weight no polished speech could. I saw the papers. I knew someone could get hurt. I warned you, not for recognition, but because lives are at stake. We can't let fear of consequences stop us from doing what's right. The board sat in stunned silence, the moral gravity of the situation piercing the usual corporate bravado. We moved quickly to cooperate with federal authorities, providing every shred of evidence we had amassed. Finch and his accomplices were charged, and the investigation expanded to examine any other projects with potential ethical violations. I was no longer merely a CEO. I had become an advocate for accountability, a bridge between oversight and the very real human impact of corporate decisions. Amid the legal storm, we established the Langley Brooks Foundation, designed to create transparent, ethical, and patient-focused research for rare neurological disorders like Maya's. Lucas became a co-signer and advisor, ensuring that lived experience informed policy, trials, and oversight. Kellen, still recovering from the trauma, lent his name and expertise to the foundation, providing credibility and scientific guidance. The foundation faced immediate scrutiny. Media outlets questioned the motives behind our actions, competitors challenged the validity of our claims, and some even doubted Lucas's credibility as a former janitor with no formal research background. But we persevered, driven by the stories of patients like Maya and the determination to prevent others from suffering due to greed and negligence. One of the most emotional days came when I watched Lucas with his daughter. Maya, fragile yet resilient, smiled as he handed her a prototype therapy device designed under the foundation's new protocols. "We're not done yet, baby girl," he whispered. "But we're getting there." I stood a few feet away, silently moved. The man who had yelled a warning in a parking lot had become a pillar of hope, a reminder that courage often comes from unexpected places. We also redesigned the labs, instituting open protocols, real-time data access, and ethical review boards that included non-scientists to represent public interest. Transparency became a cornerstone of every project. No longer would decisions be hidden behind locked doors or manipulated spreadsheets. Every step was documented, audited, and shared publicly when appropriate, emphasizing integrity over secrecy. As months passed, Maya's condition showed measurable improvement, a tangible result of the ethical practices we had implemented. Her laughter filled Lucas's small apartment, a stark contrast to the sterile, tense environment of the lab. Watching this, I understood the full impact of our work. It wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing. It was about creating systems where care, honesty, and humanity guided every decision. Kellen, too, had changed. The near-death experience and exposure of Finch's schemes humbled him. He became a vocal advocate for ethical research, ensuring that no project could proceed without rigorous scrutiny. His transformation symbolized the potential for redemption and growth even in those previously blind to the moral stakes. Through all of this, Lucas and I developed an unspoken bond. We had started as strangers from entirely different worlds, CEO and janitor, but shared purpose bridged the gap. We didn't speak much of friendship, but our actions conveyed trust, respect, and a mutual understanding that some battles are too important to face alone. The foundation began hosting seminars and public discussions on ethics in medical research. We invited other families affected by NDS, giving them a platform to share stories and advocate for change. The openness was initially met with skepticism, but slowly, trust grew. People saw that our mission was genuine, grounded in transparency, and focused on human welfare. At Meridian Enterprises, the shift was palpable. Employees who had been wary of oversight embraced the new culture. Internal audits, ethics committees, and patient-first protocols became standard. I realized that reform wasn't a single action. It was a continuous process requiring vigilance, courage, and, above all, integrity. One evening, as I walked through the Foundation's newly renovated wing, I paused by the glass doors leading to the garden. The gates, once imposing symbols of restricted access, were now open. Children played freely, researchers discussed data openly, and Lucas watched Maya chase sunlight across the lawn. More than policy, it was a philosophy, a moral compass guiding every decision. Lives were being saved, mistakes were corrected, and hope was tangible. The Foundation had become a beacon, proving that integrity and courage could challenge even the most entrenched systems. As I left the garden, Kellen approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You changed the game," he said softly. "Not just for the company, but for everyone who depends on us. For Maya, for Lucas, for every patient who might come next." I nodded, silently acknowledging the journey that had brought us here from a desperate warning shouted in a parking lot to a fully operational, ethical, and transparent foundation. The battles weren't over, but the path was clear. Courage, collaboration, and an unwavering commitment to truth had transformed fear into hope, despair into action, and secrecy into accountability. The Langley Brooks Foundation would endure, guided by people, not power. And as I watched Lucas lift Maya into the air, her laughter ringing through the halls, I understood that the doors we keep open are not opened by magic. They are opened by those willing to fight, to trust, and to act with integrity. The journey had changed all of us, leaving scars, but also creating resilience. And in that resilience, I found hope not only for Maya, but for the countless lives we were yet to touch. Moral lesson: life often places us in situations where courage is the only path forward, where listening to the smallest voice of warning can save a life. Integrity and transparency are not just ideals. They are lifelines that protect the innocent and restore trust when systems fail. Even in environments dominated by power and greed, ordinary people can enact extraordinary change through vigilance, empathy, and decisive action. Collaboration between unlikely allies can expose corruption, create accountability, and transform fear into hope. Protecting what is precious, whether a child, a sibling, or a community, demands courage and moral clarity. Ethical principles must guide every decision, from the boardroom to the lab, ensuring that profit never outweighs human life. Healing and progress are the rewards of transparency, honesty, and relentless advocacy, proving that change is possible when people refuse to remain passive in the face of injustice. We open doors not because they were meant to be open, but because we choose to act with courage, compassion, and integrity, ensuring that every life touched by our actions benefits from fairness, care, and accountability.